All right, folks, we are here for another amazing 5 Points podcast with the Chief. We are going to be talking to a senior environmental scientist today who has a wide breadth of experience in this organization and outside. You all are going to want to listen to this because if you thought that CAL FIRE was only firefighting, let me tell you something else. This is going to be something totally different, but amazing all the same. Stay tuned with us. We're going to get cooking. All right, folks, here we are. Another great 5 Points podcast with the Chief. I am Monte Manson, and
I am Joe Tyler, the Chief and Director of CAL FIRE.
So listen, folks, this time we have a wonderful series that we're going to be talking about. We have a very special guest with us today, Miss Stacy Stanish, and we are going to be talking about a lot of the accomplishments women in the fire service and in our organization of CAL FIRE do on a regular basis. And so today we have a very special guest with us. So please just really quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Monty. My name's Stacy Stanish. I'm a senior environmental scientist in the forest practice program at CAL FIRE. My functional title is forest practice biologist.
So we were talking a little bit before the podcast, and you mentioned that you are a registered professional forester as well. Talk a little bit about that, because there's something that I think we're going to be doing here. We're going to be giving you a nickname, I think. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, many years ago, I had the challenge to take the registered professional forester's exam, and I just ended up asking if I could sit for the exam. I didn't meet the minimum qualifications, but the exam committee recognized through my resume and experience in forest practice that I had enough that work experience on the ground that I could sit for the exam, and spent a long time studying for it and passed it first time.
Nice.
And I'm number 3000, RPF 3000.
There it is, RPF 3000. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to hereby nickname Stacy 3000. That's her name. She is registered professional forester number 3000, but very well accomplished nonetheless. So Stacy, if you wouldn't mind, and Chief, if you don't mind, wanted to just hear a little bit about your experience and kind of how you came up. You talked a little bit about, being a registered professional forester. And so let's talk about, your experience, kind of your background, how you came up, outside of the department, and then you were able to bring your skill set here to CAL FIRE. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I went to Humboldt State University back when it was Humboldt State University, and got my degree in fisheries biology. And it was kind of something that I always wanted to do. My, grew up in a poor military family, so the best thing that we could do that was cheap and fun was go hunting and fishing and camping with my dad. So we did a lot of outdoor activities. And so I knew I wanted to be in something outdoors, but fisheries related mostly. So I got into, was a fisheries biologist for Pacific Lumber Company for a little over a year, and moved on, ended up working at Fish and Game for back when it was still Fish and Game. I'm really dating myself, Humboldt State University Fish and Game. I got into the timber program in 2005 and was mainly their fisheries biologist in that program, but then started building on wildlife experience too in it. Yeah. And kind of moved up in the field and became a supervisor of the program when the timber tax got reinstated. So then in 2014, I had to make a choice of, do I stay in that position or do I go and work for CAL FIRE under Pete Cafferata, who's a legend.
A legend.
And
yes.
So I ended up coming over to CAL FIRE, working in the forest practice program, and that's kind of what I'm doing here today. But oddly enough, mostly what I do in my job is is not fisheries related. It's mostly wildlife and working with spotted owls.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you were just telling the chief and I about some of your experience with spotted owls, that there's some really close to us here in the greater Sacramento area.
Greater.
Greater
Definitely
Sacramento.
not Sacramento.
Yeah, right. So but it's really interesting to talk about kind of how they communicate and some of the things that you were telling us. Give us a little bit about that with the spotted owl. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so usually right now it's the start of survey season. So March 1st is when everybody goes out and they start calling for spotted owls to make sure that their timber operations don't affect the nesting, reproductive actions of spotted owls. Yeah. So they'll go out and they'll do this 4-note hoot, which don't make me do. It's very bad, and all of my peers would make fun of me.
Yeah.
But we will run a 10-minute hooting protocol. So it goes through the different 4-note hoots and barking calls, and there's monkey calls. There's all these different responses that, based on how they respond, will tell you kind of what they're up to. So, it might be a warning or a contact call or something like that. But once we get a detection, that's where you can you fine-tune where they're located.
It's interesting. We talked about this prior to the podcast starting as well. Is one of the ways that within this natural resources building that we recognize, and I guess not anymore, but I always knew where Stacy sat in the building because there was a spotting scope, not to see anything other than the wildlife and the birds that are flying around the Sacramento area.
Right.
It was intriguing.
Yeah, when I had the spotting scope there, people would ask me, I'm like, are you watching people? I'm like, oh, I have no interest in watching people. I want to see the birds. So we see peregrine falcons flying between the buildings quite often, and they're just one of the most incredible birds of prey. They're fierce hunters, and they're just really majestic birds. So it's exciting to watch them and have this, wonderful building to be able to watch them from.
All right, Stacy. So when I became the director, I really talked about a diverse department, and I talked about the diversity in what we do. In fact, I was just at a leadership level 1 class last week where we talked about being an all-risk fire department, but we're so much more than an all-risk fire department. That's one of the important reasons to ensure that we bring you in and others in talking about women that have made a difference and are making a difference within CAL FIRE. One of the priorities when I took this position was looking at how do we become more diverse across the department. And when I look at our safety versus our non-safety classifications, I know that only in our last statistic, only just over 5%, 5.16% of our safety classifications, which includes most of our resource management staff, only 5.16% are female. Now, when you look at the larger organization and you combine a department of 12,000 people, now that number comes up a little bit, but it certainly is still glaring to me because when you add the safety and non-safety classifications, it only comes up to like 14.8% of the entire department are female. And so it was important to continue this process to build our workforce succession planning unit, to build on recruitment and retention, and really highlight an effort to recruit more women into the department. From your perspective, you come up in a field of biology, as we've talked about a little bit already, but as a woman within CAL FIRE, what have been your experiences?
Well, considering when I first came to CAL FIRE, I think it was more was the odd person out because I was a biologist, so I wasn't a firefighter and not a forester at the time. So I guess it's something that I never specifically paid attention to, and I think it's been the span of my career, and education too. When I was in the Fisheries program, I was one of 2 women out of 130 students in the Fisheries program. And it wasn't anything where I sat and thought, well, shoot, there should be more women or anything, sounds terrible, but it was just like, I can hold my own kind of, it's something that I'm really passionate about. And just, it never became a focus of mine, I guess. And so as I moved on through Fish and Game, and now through CAL FIRE, it's kind of the same thing where it's like I recognize, there's certainly less women or fewer women, but I guess I've never really paid too much attention to it. I would say, at least, from the biology side, I recognize that there are far more women coming up in the fields of fisheries and wildlife and botany, and I see a lot of diversity on that side.
From your perspective, what do you think are some of the things we can do as a department to continue to pave the way and keep the doors open for women in all facets of the department? As you're aware, we've got 187 different classifications. And so what do we do to ensure that we are making sure that we've got those opportunities for women and, quite frankly, all walks of life? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think, public outreach is really important. One of the programs that I've been fortunate enough to just very minutely be involved in is Camp Cinder.
Yeah.
So I've been invited to come and speak at that, and in the evenings, just for an hour or so. So it's a very, very small portion of it. So I think programs like Camp Cinder are wildly important. Reaching out to the junior colleges and universities. I know it's important to support those kinds of outreaches for any opportunity that might come up where we are invited. The endorsement of being involved in professional organizations, like I'm really involved in the Wildlife Society, and have the opportunity to present every once in a while, and I think, represent CAL FIRE and the work that we do. So I think those are really, really important to support.
Do you, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit ago, thinking about your field of expertise specifically, do you see a lot of women maybe coming up in that field of expertise that maybe have opportunities that we can recruit and pull in? Is that a trend that you kind of see in your field, or is the field itself something that really is a little more male dominated than not, or what do you see there?
I think in the fish and wildlife field, it's definitely starting to even out. I think there's I think women are seeing and young girls are seeing that there's a lot of opportunity in especially in California for getting into aquatics or terrestrial wildlife, botany, anything like that. I just think there's a lot of opportunity, just given some of the regulations that are in place in California, and the companies that do surveys and whatnot. I think there's a lot of job opportunity.
Yeah.
So, Stacy, you started the conversation off that you graduated from Humboldt State, or what was Humboldt State at the time, and then you went to work for a year or more at Palco, and then at a point in time you went to Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, before coming to the Department of Forestry, Fire Protection, CAL FIRE. So state service, how long have you been with the state?
Now I'm really going to date myself.
If you don't mind asking, me asking.
I think it's now 27 years.
And how long have you been with CAL FIRE?
For 10.
Very nice. So well tenured in your position and in the department. So now an unscripted could be a loaded question, right? But that's what I like, especially when we did things like town hall meetings and things of that nature. So well tenured within the department in the field of biology within resource management. If you were the director for a day or longer, what would you do different? What are areas that we could improve within the department?
Well, in my time at CAL FIRE, I was one of the 2 environmental scientists doing wildlife, and now with the programs, like prescribed fire and fuels reduction programs, we have a lot of environmental scientists out at the units, and sometimes we're able to bring them over from Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they have a lot of experience, and sometimes they come with different levels of experience. So it's having a training program within CAL FIRE that we can all kind of get kind of on the same level, having the necessary fish and wildlife experience that maybe some people don't get being out at the units. So just having some sort of functional training program for what we do in order for us to meet the needs of the fuels reduction, prescribed fire, fuels treatment types of programs.
And I think that that's fair. Now, I keep saying environmental scientist, but you're a senior environmental scientist. And you're right that while we had just a couple in years past, we have dozens of environmental scientists across the state as we continue to expand our organization. So I think that that's fair from that perspective of finding more opportunities for more training and collaboration to ensure that across the state that we're at least have similar knowledge and how to move forward in various business practices or otherwise. So. Yeah,
and I would like CAL FIRE to be seen as being experts in our field in all aspects, including, environmental science, and recognizing that we do have people with extensive backgrounds and knowledge and experience, and they're experts in what they do, and I just would like to see CAL FIRE get recognized for that.
So, Stacy, one of the things that I know Chief Tyler talks about when we are out, speaking with folks across the department, is we really are working hard to set this department up for the future, 10, maybe even 15 years. All of the things that we do now are setting the department up for activity, at that time. And so as I think about that now, and I see you in this great field of expertise and all of the experience that you bring to the table, how and what can we do to support you in making sure that we are also finding folks who are younger, teenagers, school age, whatever? How do we get them involved now to kind of prepare them for taking over your position, taking over other positions? You talked a little bit about Camp Cinder as an kind of an exposure point, but maybe there are some other things that we can do. What advice do you give, or would you give to girls, young ladies out there who are considering jobs in your field of expertise, and quite frankly, other jobs within CAL FIRE? What kind of advice might you give to those folks?
Well, for what I do, I would say just get out in the environment. Like that's my favorite thing to do. Just take a hike, go, spend time on the river, be curious, have that wonderment of seeing a bird and trying to figure out what kind of species that is. But just spend as much time out in nature as possible. And if I were to look back on my younger self, I would have told myself, volunteer as much as possible with nature centers, or, reach out to the different agencies and see if you could, go out and spend a day, following along with what somebody does in their career. So, whether that's going out, doing stream habitat surveys or hooting for owls or anything like that, is just spend time outside. And what we have in California is so special, and just the variety of what we have is for species and habitats is just breathtaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important that it's exactly what you just said. It's about getting outdoors. California is such a beautiful state, and there's so many areas that so many people don't get the opportunity to see. So whether that is going to a local park, whether that is walking along the American River Trail, whether that is going into the Cascades or the Sierras, or even perhaps, finding those park-like opportunities in which access might not be so accessible to get to, but there is a lot of life beyond the closed doors, and finding yourself an opportunity to get outside really will make a difference.
Or you can watch peregrines from your window.
Absolutely.
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 Yeah.
What made you decide to go to Humboldt State?
Well, they had a really good fisheries program, and I couldn't help it. It was the only university that I applied for, and UC Davis also has a strong fisheries program, but Humboldt is known for their steelhead and salmon, and just a lot of outdoor classroom opportunities too.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So, it was the only one that I wanted to go to, and thank goodness I got in.
And your desires in that field obviously occurred at a much younger age, and I'm taking a guess based on our conversation that is in part of getting outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I remember my dad taking us fishing from. That's one of my earliest memories, and and just spending time with my old man.
Yeah,
Very nice.
That's amazing. This conversation has me thinking about something from a little bit of a different perspective. Just want to get an idea from you. So thinking about that notion of people getting outdoors and seeing all of the different aspects of what California offers. I would imagine that for some people who grow up in more urban areas of California, those types of opportunities, kind of a little bit to what you were saying, Chief, may or may not be as accessible as some other folks. And so I was just curious, do you have any thoughts about how we can reach folks in maybe, communities that don't typically get those kinds of opportunities? What might we be able to do to reach those folks to get them to see exactly what you're talking about, how beautiful California actually is? What do we do to get them out there?
Well, I actually did grow up in the Bay Area.
Nice.
So,
okay, well, that's helped good.
Yeah,
there you go. Yep.
Yeah. My dad was stationed at Moffett Field, and what was important for us was having nearby parks to go to, and just up in the foothills of the Bay Area, that's where, we'd go to the small little lakes up in the foothills and go fish for crappie and bluegill and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think even urban areas, we have a robust urban forestry program at CAL FIRE, and, supporting those. I mean, that's important to connect kids to the environment where it may not be as accessible to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up a lot like you, even though I grew up partially in LA and then here in Sacramento. My family was always about the outdoors, and so it was camping and it was boating and it was fishing and all of these things. And so my perspective is similar to yours. It's interesting though how, each and every one of us, there are things in life that just kind of we gravitate to, although I enjoy all of those things, that just didn't become something that I, decided I wanted to be an expert in. But it's so wonderful to hear and see people in which they're saying, oh, this is my life. This is absolutely what I love to do. And you are an exceptional example of that. So want to thank you for giving us your perspectives about the job that you do, about being a woman in our organization, and all of the great work that you're doing. Stacy, I really appreciate that very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you for being a leader within the organization and making the difference that you do.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Hey, so listen, another 5 Points podcast. It's in the bag. We have had an amazing show today, learning a lot of things from this department that maybe some of you haven't heard before. And so we were excited to have Stacy here. Thank you again very much, Stacy. And listen, you all have the opportunity to subscribe to our podcast through all of the different media out there. If you can name it, it's there. So go find us, go subscribe, be ready for the next podcast because we're coming your way very, very soon. But for now, you can consider this podcast cooked. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.